Hello today. We've had a little bit of a break because we've all been out of town, but we're going to pick up today with Mark chapter 15, and it's a little somber. It's going to be about the crucifixion of Jesus. So just prepare your hearts. Okay, here we go. So as soon as it was morning, having held a meeting with the elders, scribes, and the whole Sanhedrin, the chief priests tied Jesus up, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate. And Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he answered him, "You say so." And the chief priests accused him of many things. Pilate questioned him again. "Aren't you going to answer? Look how many things they're accusing you of." But still Jesus did not answer. And so Pilate was amazed. Now at the festival, Pilate used to release for the people a prisoner whom they requested. There was one named Barabbas who was in prison with rebels who had committed murder during the rebellion. Now the crowd came up and began to ask Pilate to do for them as was his custom. Pilate answered them, "Do you want me to release the king of the Jews for you?" Or, well, it says, for he knew it was because of envy that the chief priests had handed him over. Do you hear me? So he says to them, "Do you want me to release the king of the Jews?" Now they were livid that he was referring to him as that, because they thought they did not believe he was the Son of God. Now, this is not to condemn Jews, okay? The Jews are God's chosen people, but these Jews in this time, there were many Jews who believed, but these Jews in this time that were the ones crucifying him did not believe. They thought he was blaspheming. And so here Pilate is calling him the king of the Jews, which is blasphemy to them. But listen to why. It says, for he knew it was because of envy, basically, that the Jews handed him over. That's what envy in your heart will do. It will open up the door for Satan to come in and influence your decisions and your actions. But the chief priest stirred up the crowd so that he would release Barabbas to them instead. Do you see what is happening? They would rather a criminal be released instead of Jesus, who never hurt a fly, who loved every person, who was kind to every person, who only did good. They would prefer a murderer be released instead. In verse 12, Pilate asked them again, "Then what do you want me to do with the one that you call the king of the Jews?" Oh, this was stirring them up even more. Because now he's saying, you Jews, you are the ones who call him the king of the Jews, knowing good and well, no, they do not. Again they shouted, "Crucify him!" Pilate said to them, "Why, what has he done wrong?" But they shouted all the more, "Crucify him!" Wanting to satisfy the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them, and after having Jesus flogged, he handed him over to be crucified. Now, verse 16. The soldiers then led him away into the palace, called the whole company together. They dressed him in a purple robe, twisted together a crown of thorns, and put it on him. And they began to salute him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" They were hitting him on the head with a stick and spitting on him. Getting down on their knees, they were paying homage to him, which wasn't sincere. They were mocking him. And after they'd mocked him, they stripped him of the purple robe and put his clothes back on him and led him out to crucify him. They forced a man coming in from the country who was passing by to carry his cross, and he was Simon of Cyrene, the father of Alexander and Rufus. What a name, huh? Rufus. How many children today are named Rufus? Verse 22, they brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means place of the skull. If you've never been to Israel, I highly encourage you to go. You can go to this place called Golgotha, and there, from a certain vantage point, when you look towards the tomb is built into a rock, and carved out in the rock, not man-made, just natural carvings in the rock, from a vantage point, looks literally like a skull. And that's called the place of the skull. They tried to give to him wine mixed with myrrh, but he didn't take it. And then they crucified him, divided his clothes, casting lots to decide who would get what. And remember, he went through this for you. Now it was 9 a.m. when they crucified him, and the inscription of the charge written against him was King of the Jews. They crucified 2 criminals with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by were yelling insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "Ha! The one who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, why don't you save yourself, coming down from the cross?" And the same way the chief priests and the scribes mocking him among themselves, saying, "Well, oh, look, he saved others, but he cannot save himself. Now let the Messiah, the King of Israel, come down now from the cross, so that we may see and believe." Pause. That's the problem. Still today, everybody needs to see to believe. But Jesus himself said, "Blessed are they who believe but haven't seen. Great is their reward in heaven." Now, even those who were crucified with him taunted him. And when it was noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. That's when my daughter gets out of school. Yes, it is. And at 3 he cried out with a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani," which is translated, my God, why have you abandoned me?" And when some of those standing there heard this, they said, "He's calling for Elijah." Someone ran and filled a sponge with soured wine and fixed it on a stick and offered it to him. "Let's see if Elijah will come take him down." Jesus let out a loud cry and breathed his last. Then the curtain of the temple was torn in two from the top to the bottom. And when the centurion who was standing opposite saw him and saw the way he breathed his last breath, he said, "Truly, this man was the Son of God." There were also women watching from a distance, and among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James the younger, and Joseph and Salome. In Galilee these women followed him and took care of him. Many other women had come up with him to Jerusalem. And when it was already evening, because it was the day of preparation, that is, the day before the Sabbath, so this was on a Friday. Sabbath is always on a Saturday. Joseph of Arimathea, a prominent member of the Sanhedrin, who was himself looking forward to the kingdom of God, came and boldly went to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. Pilate was surprised that he was already dead. Summoning the centurion, he asked him whether he had truly already died. And when he found out from the centurion, he gave the corpse to Joseph. And after he brought some linen cloth, Joseph took him down, wrapped him in the linen, which was the way to bury people at the time, then laid him in a tomb cut out of a rock and rolled a stone against the entrance to the tomb. These were very, very large stones, so large it took many people to roll the stone. Why? So that no one could just easily come and uncover that tomb. Many times people were buried with, jewelry or gifts, expensive items. So they wanted a way to protect the items inside. And they would do that with those rocks. And it says, last verse, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, were watching where he was laid. somber day, my friends. That is Mark chapter 15. Tally ho.